all about your good energy. So our last few weeks was focused on activating your physical body. We had Joanne McKinney share ways that you can really get your sleeping giant going. And then Dr. Jim Bovard took us into the why it's so important to stay active for your longevity, your health, and your good energy. So today it's all about the spirit and moving towards your best expression of self through your career and through your life. Today's session invites you to let go of what holds you back, any of those stories that you may have held on to in your life about who you are, and maybe time to reconsider your identity as you stretch your wingspan beyond who you are as a student or an accountant, as a lawyer, an engineer, a physician, a coach, a trainer, a politician, a mother, a father, a grandparent. Whatever you do and however you've defined yourself, today it just invites you to step across that line and to see your goodness in your creativity so you can actually really bring that into your career at another whole level. So I want you to try to imagine what you might do without limitations on who you are, all those shoulds and expectations that you've told yourself, or maybe your parents or your caregivers have told you. Is there more for you? So I believe that there is when we expand our thinking and notice shifts in our behaviors and our feelings in our body, when we move towards new goals and challenge ourselves just a little bit, energy starts to flow within us in a much greater way and in between us as well. I think that we are really supported in those times. You know, when you've got an intention, it just really does manifest. So try it out. Set an intention about something that you want to manifest. And guess what? Watch, it will show up in your life. Maybe not immediately, and it may take some focused attention and practice over time, but you will arrive. So today I am so happy to be interviewing someone who I consider a spiritual teacher and an innovator. Nico Luce is living in Switzerland, and he took the practice of yoga to a whole new level here in Vancouver. He and his wife developed Y Yoga, which is now a really thriving business in Vancouver, so much so that he doesn't have to be here anymore. And it just continues. And so, but anyway, before we start, and I'm going to ask a little bit, Nico, a few things about how that all kind of came to mind for him. But I'd like to sort of set a context for today with a poem by Antonio Machado. And it says, he says, "Last night as I was sleeping, I dreamt marvelous error, that spring was breaking out in my heart. I said along which secret aqueduct, oh water, are you coming to me, water of a new life that I never drank? Last night as I was sleeping, I dreamt marvelous error, that I had a beehive here in my heart, and the golden bees were making white combs and sweet honey from my old failures. Last night as I was sleeping, I dreamt marvelous error, that a fiery sun was giving light inside my heart. It was a fiery one because I felt warmth as it was from a hearth, and sun began, it gave it light and brought tears to my eyes. Last night as I slept, I dreamt marvelous error, that it was God I had here inside my heart. A Kona body." That's from Antonio Machado. Nico, welcome. It's nice to have you here.
Oh, wow. After Machado, that's amazing. That was so beautiful.
And you say that so well, Machado.
Machado.
Nico. So how did you get the inspiration to start Y Yoga?
Oh, I don't think I got the information to start Y Yoga. I think I got the information to start a home. It was a home. It was a home studio. Before Y Yoga, I was teaching all over town. I was teaching at rec centers and gyms and yoga studios. And at some point, after 5 years of doing that, I felt like I needed home. I needed a place to call home, not only where I live, but where I spend my awake time. And that was the first thing that I heard. It was like, let's start a home studio. Let's make it homey. where people are welcome. We want to have a place. We love having people at home, but we couldn't have the classes at home, not yet, not at that time. So the first thing was we need a home studio.
And I heard that you went to a trip to India, and that there was something born from a trip that you had with your wife in India. Is there anything
Oh,
about that, or is that just
something born? Yes, that is way before. That was in 1999. I wasn't into yoga yet. I was a professional actor. I was living in Argentina at the time, and I bought a one-way ticket to New York, and I had some savings in my account, and I went traveling for a year. I didn't know what was going to be the next place. I did New York, Miami, Seattle, Tokyo, then I did Thailand, Australia, and then I went to India.
Wow.
And I spent 4 months in India traveling by myself. And on my very last week, I was just running out of money by then, I went to visit the Taj Mahal, which is like the Temple of Love. And I met this beautiful Canadian woman that was visiting the Taj Mahal for the first time. And we spent a night. Our first day was just to go see the Taj Mahal together. It happened that we both had tickets to Varanasi on the same train, the same day. So we went to Varanasi. We spent 4 days there. And then 2 months later, I got an email from her telling me that she's pregnant, that this baby is mine, that she just needed to tell me. And that was the beginning. So I got back to her and I was very excited about the news that I was going to be a dad. I was 25. And I invited her to come join me in Ibiza in Spain. I was there at the time. And 17 years later, we're still together. She's my wife. My daughter was born. Her name is India, obviously. And so that was the beginning of the journey in India. That was the first thing that I learned from India, that anything can happen, anything will happen. And our job is just to be ready.
Yeah, I get the feeling of that openness that you arrived and being in the Temple of Love, right? The Taj Mahal, and open, and she was as well, and it all kind of like, that's the flow, right? It's almost like you are an example of that fluidity in your life. I just love the fact you took a one-way ticket, and then just all of these things, just you trusted, and it would just actually evolve.
Yeah, I think India taught me that. Both the country and my daughter, they both taught me. I struggle with this a little bit because I teach people to intention themselves and to be clear about what they want. And it's important because when we don't know what we want, we end up doing what we don't want. And intentions are great. And at the same time, included in the intention is, let me be ready to whatever comes my way too, because I don't know it all. And I don't know what is needed. And I'm here to learn. Life is the teacher. Life is going to provide the teaching that I need to learn at this time. And if I'm too stuck in where I was going before, and I see the sign that I need to turn this way in order to go where I need to go, maybe I don't listen to the signs. I don't pay attention to what life is trying to teach me. So both is having a clear intention and at the same time being open to receive new information, new ideas, new insight, new inspiration, new ways every day.
Yeah, so that intention, and I imagine too, when you're making intentions, you're kind of holding a sense of your core values. And so what would you say are your top core values?
Core values.
Because they would define your intention, right?
Like core values, first of all, it has to be real. I value real connections, real people that want to show themselves in the way they are. Moments in which we allow ourselves to be exactly as we are, like the naked truth of ourselves. That is at the core. And another core value, something that I bring often to the classes that I teach, to my teachings, is to to make peace, to make peace with the present moment, to make peace with myself, to make peace with life, to make peace is an exercise, making peace.
In that, what you're describing is bringing stress down and then being flexible, and that's where creativity kind of is born, right? And then from that, there's sort of this coming forward. So, you give birth to this new stage of your career, from being an actor into then moving into the yoga and moving in that direction with your wife. And yeah. And so you're defining top core values then would be authenticity, being real, and keep going.
Making peace, acceptance. Yeah.
And I'm hearing values of family as well, because it was your daughter India that brought you together.
Yeah, she did. Well, family is so. I didn't know who I was until I was given the responsibility to look for someone else, to look after someone else. That is something, and I'm not saying that everybody needs to have a family in order to figure out who they are, but for me, it was almost, they gave me mirrors. My family became mirrors, and now I have more mirrors, more reflection of my actions, both the stuff that I like about myself, the stuff that I don't like about myself, the stuff that I need to work on is still a mirror there facing, but mirrors and reference points. That's. But I find I want to be clear about this, because I have many friends and family members that they don't have the family. They chose not to, but they created the same system of mirrors, and they brought people into their circle, perhaps closer, that if they had a family. I've met families in my life where they felt like they weren't that close to each other. But I know friends that don't have family that have those people in their lives. So we create our family, and it's not always mom, dad, and the children, and it doesn't last forever either. So right now it is for me, but in 20 years it's not going to be that kind of family.
Yeah, and so family created, and it makes sense then too why, when you said at the beginning about creating a place that was home, that you'd kind of come home with developing the studios, and your project of Why Yoga is really about that. So, I want to ask you, I've heard this term, it's a Sanskrit term, and I'm probably going to pronounce it incorrectly, but Amkara, which is to help people see their story. And I'm just wondering, first of all, maybe you can pronounce it correctly for me. And also asking, what story would your career tell about you, Nico?
Oh, that's so interesting. You said it right. The story. I teach quite a bit around the story, and I teach with stories. I love stories. I bring to the classes that I teach mythology and philosophy, and I love the storytelling, because through one story we can learn through so many teachings. And I think the stories make the teachings more humane, more accessible. There's something about putting ourselves in someone else's situation for a moment. I get out of my story, I'm getting into someone else's story, and it clarifies something. However, when I started teaching yoga, I realized that if the story was my story, the teachings could be confused as me. So I had to learn at some point to tell the stories in a way that is not about me, is about us. And therefore I choose most often stories that are not about my personal story. And that's why I perhaps resource to stories from the past, stories from books, legends, myths. So it's not about Nico, and this is not Nico's show. Because in the yoga world today, you can get into that. They're amazing yoga celebrities. They're doing an amazing job at promoting themselves. And sometimes you can be left in this situation where, well, you're so incredible up front there on stage, but that's not what yoga is about. Yoga is about the relationship. So I'm very careful when I teach not to confuse the teaching with my story.
And in fact, my first time ever meeting you, Nico, was actually at a class in Vancouver. And oops, there, just spinning with this idea. But you were teaching, and you told this mythology about the buffalo. And do you want to share that right now? It's a beautiful story. I was so touched by it. And just in this time of cultural, healing, and that. And sort of global coming together, and it just felt really moving. So can you share that?
It's a wonderful story. Yeah, I heard that story actually the first time from Joseph Campbell. The Power of Myth is one of his audiobooks. He wrote a book called The Hero with a Thousand Masks. So he studied mythology around the world and started realizing that all these myths and legends had so many things in common, that every culture would develop their own myths in order to impart valuable teachings and core values. But in the end, the ritual performed is always evoking the myth. And I'm going to be a little bit more clear about it. That when you don't understand the myth behind the ritual, then it becomes an empty ritual. If I tell you that we started a yoga practice and we do sun salutations, but I don't really talk about what does the sun represent? Am I praying to a god out there? Is this a religion? What am I getting into? When I chant Om, what is this? But if we start with, well, this is what it is. Like the sun is actually not out there, but within you. The sun is in the middle of your heart, and it has the light that will illuminate your mind, and it will guide you through the righteous path. And everyone has that sun. And when we start the practice, is making a salutation to the light within myself, to the very essence of who I am. That changes everything. You do a sun salutation after that, and it's not ritualistic. It's all of a sudden you're just coming back to yourself. That the knowledge is in you, that what you're looking for is actually within you. So that is the part of the myth. And then I can tell the story of the myth. The one that you're talking about is called the Buffalo Dance. And is about at the time when the settlers hadn't been in the Western, the Europeans in North America. Native Americans lived in very large numbers, like large societies, that they were nomads, so they were moving with the seasons, they were moving with the animals, with the land. But sometimes it was difficult to gather all the meat that they needed for the winter. So if you had to feed like 5,000 people, you would have to gather a lot of meat. So one of the things that they used to do was to try to bring the buffaloes to the edge of the cliff, and then somehow create a stampede, so they would fall down the cliff and many animals could die at once, and then they would all get into work and they would prepare and have meat for the winter. But there was this one season where winter was coming, but the buffaloes were very smart. They weren't getting any closer to the edge of the cliff. The prospect for the winter was not good. There wasn't going to be enough food. So one of the girls, the daughter of the chief, woke up one morning and she sees that the buffaloes are right there near the cliff. And she looks up at the buffaloes and she says, if any one of you falls down that cliff, I will marry you. So now the buffalo chief calls all the buffaloes and they all throw themselves down the cliff. Well, then the buffalo chief survives that and comes and says, okay, now we go. And she's like, oh no. And he says, oh yes. You made a promise, and I fulfilled your promise. Look at all of them. Those are my family, all dead, so you can eat. But now you and I have to go. So she followed the buffalo. When her father woke up, and they realized that she's not around, he decides to follow her daughter, and he starts following her steps. And after a few days, he stops at a place where it's called the Buffalo Wallow, which is where the buffaloes go to drink water and bathe. And at the wallow, there's a magpie. There's this bird that is very auspicious. And so the father asked the magpie, "Have you seen my daughter? She ran away with the buffaloes." And the magpie says, "Oh yeah, I saw her. She's actually on the other side of the hill." Well, the father said, "Can you please go tell her that I'm waiting for her at the wallow?" So the bird goes there and tells his daughter that her father is waiting for her. But she tells the bird, "Go tell my father to wait, that I'm going to come as soon as I find a good opportunity, because I don't want his life is at risk. If the buffalo see him, they're going to run over him." So she waits for the right moment. But one morning, her buffalo husband wakes up and pulls out a horn and says, "Go to the wallow and get me some water." So she does, and she sees this as a great opportunity. So she goes there and she sees her dad, and he's like, "Dad, I'm well. I made this promise with the buffalo chief, and now I have to be with him." And the dad is like, "But no, you have to come back." And it's like, "Dad, I'm going to come back whenever I see a good opportunity, but you have to trust me." So she goes back with the water, but the buffalo, as soon as he gets the water, he can smell human in the water. So they go to the wallow, they find the father, they run over him, and there he goes. Dad is dead. More tragedy. So she comes over and says, "Well, but what have you done? This is my dad, like I followed you, and this didn't need to happen. It didn't have to get to this extent." And he says, "But what about us? You're always hunting us for the life and prosperity of your community." So he says to her, because he was a kind buffalo, he says to her, "If you can bring your dad back to life, I'll let you both of you go." Mm. So she remembers this song. It's a revivifying song, and she asks for the magpie to find any remains of her dad. And the magpie comes with a bone, and she puts this blanket over the bone, and she starts singing this song. And she goes on for a while. She gets into her trance, and she really wants to bring her father back to life. And after singing for a while, there's a body lying under the blanket. And she pulls the blanket, but Dad is not alive yet. So she keeps singing, and eventually he's back to life. Mm. And the buffalo says, "Well, now before you go, why don't you let me teach you the dance that we do for our dead? So next time you hunt for food, perform this song, and all our spirits will come back." Mm-hmm. So the buffalo now teaches her the buffalo dance. And that is the legend behind the buffalo dance. The Native Americans made a conscious effort on honoring, because they saw themselves as part of the land, not a part. They mm-hmm. didn't see how someone could own the land owns us. And this idea that we are the way we behave, we become what we eat, the way we relate to the world. I love that story, because it comes back to, it's not really what we do, it's how we do it, it's why we do it, it's what is the intention behind, but it changes the whole outcome.
Mm. Yeah, and it seems as well a story about relationship and being in relationship. We're living on a planet that's dying, and we have to be intentional about caring for it. And we're in a time when cultures are dying as well, and we need to be in care with each other. So it seems to be such a story about relationship as well, which is kind of. Mm-hmm. This whole series is about good energy, right? And it's kind of where that good energy comes from, the between, right? The sense of being that we can almost kind of in a meta way, co-regulate with each other, right? As we need each other. And so I love that story as much now as when I first heard you tell that story, Nico.
Yeah, it's all about the environment, and the environment, not only the external environment, but the inner environment, as within, so without. The idea that our inner landscape, our internal landscape, really affects everything else. That's why the journey of the yogis is, first you go mind, go within, and then it changes how you see the outside. I feel we lose perspective in a way. When I look at the big picture, I don't get discouraged though, because in the big picture, the world is not at risk. Humanity, maybe, species, maybe, the world will keep going and keep recreating. It's just unfortunate that we are missing out, that we seem to miss out on this opportunity of living life to the fullest. And where does it come from? It comes from within, I believe. Like this energy, the source is within us. So instead of chasing it on the outside, let's create some space so we can go inside. I'm not saying that you live the entire day meditating. Do I meditate all day? I don't. But can I have some time, some quality time during the day, in which it's okay to go inside and to go into contemplation? A time where my time is not being put under a value machine, and it has to, a time that is not productive, maybe. A time that is reflective, a time in yoga we pose, and then there's a time for the repose. And then you step back, and then you feel that, whatever you've done. That is Shavasana, we finish with that. And it's so important, because otherwise there's no reflection. It's like, okay, I've been building all this energy, I've been stirring the pot, I've been just fueling the fire. And then we don't seem to have enough time to savor the food, to watch the flame. So I find that, where does the energy come from? From that, the time in between. It's like, you've done enough. Now you step back for a moment and just watch. Because all the things that you may think that if life was generous enough would give you and you would be so happy, perhaps you don't have them because you actually don't need them. Because maybe you have actually plenty already. And you're the only one that doesn't seem to know it.
Yeah, I love what you're saying earlier, just the sense of, thinking that sun inside us, that sense of like doing the sun salutation, really sort of, being with that sense of the sun living within us. And also just, not sort of buying into an addictive kind of way of living, of like searching for meaning outside of ourselves, and just taking that time in, right? Which we would call like self-regulation in psychological terms, and then co-regulation with each other, right? So we're kind of self-regulating more, and then more available and more connected, to co-regulate with each other. And yoga is so great that way, and yeah. So when you take a pause for yourself, what feels most meaningful in the work that you're doing, Nico?
For me, because of the lifestyle that I have right now, I basically travel on the weekends to different cities around Europe or Asia or North America. I do a little bit of some longer tours, but basically weekends I'm away from home. And sometimes I'm away for an entire week or an entire month teaching a teacher training in Turkey or in somewhere else. So what I treasure the most actually is home time. What I treasure the most is basic routines. Waking up in the morning, making breakfast for the kids, having my hot cereal, like the simple, basic routine stuff, because I actually miss it. I don't have it on it's not on a regular basis. So being home and the routine is the best thing for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I really hear that actually, and the sense that all of your life, the evolution of it has come from the birth of India and more children and your beautiful wife, and just I guess I can feel that sense of anchoring when you do get a chance to just be doing those simple things.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because all the other stuff that I at some point I really wanted to travel, to keep traveling the world. We have an opportunity right now through technology and exposure, and that as yoga teachers, we can live anywhere we want. We can teach anywhere we want. Is there's a lot of freedom in that. There are great opportunities coming up. And I've been doing this now for 3 years. The last 3 years have been entirely dedicated to travel teaching. So when I'm home, I don't teach, for example. I don't have a local studio. That's why we live in Switzerland. It's in the middle of everywhere, but we live in the countryside. We live actually in a horse farm. We don't have neighbors, like we have horses around, and it's the simple life. All of a sudden, it was like I created this complicated life, and what I treasure is the simplicity. So usually from Monday through Friday is back to routine, back to the simple things. You wake up in the morning and have a glass of warm water with lemon. Like just that simple. And sometimes that is exquisite. I love it.
And in those simple things, how do you kind of access your creativity? Is it from doing those simple things, or do you actually take time at a certain time to really, intentionally meditate in the morning? Or what is your routine, Nico?
My routine, when in the ideal day, is I wake up, I help the kids to get ready for school. Usually I have breakfast once they leave. They leave quite early here in Switzerland. And then after breakfast, I do a practice. And sometimes my practice is I go to the gym. I go actually to another place. They have all these things. And I don't do weights, but I do a lot of weight training, body weight training. I'm moving my body in space. I needed to recover from some shoulder injuries. So I went back to, okay, let's figure this out, because maybe doing all this chaturangas is not actually helping out, and it wasn't a balanced practice. So I do that in the morning. Yeah.
I've seen your website and that contorted kind of upside down, and you're holding yourself up with one arm and your legs are just totally outside here. And I thought to myself, that's got to have a toll. It's like, I don't know how you do that.
There's a lot of other stuff that we need to do in order to keep our, if we want, and not everybody wants it, but if we want an asana practice that includes all these arm balances and back bends and contortioning, I find that there's a practice that needs to be built around that to support it, because otherwise the body, if you keep stretching it, it's going to fall apart. Like eventually it's going to dislocate that shoulder. What is going to keep it together? So most of the work that I do in the morning, when I either at home or when I go to the gym, is to build infrastructure in a way, to put my body together, so then I can play around. And then I come home, I have lunch with my wife, and in the afternoon I have another practice. Now it's a yoga practice at home, and it's usually a little bit more chill. While in the morning is more young and fiery, and I'm just working out. In the afternoon is the cool down practice, and that leads into meditation. But that's an ideal day. How many ideals day are in the real day? They don't happen all the time. I would say if they can happen 3-4 times a week, I'm the happiest man on earth. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I'm traveling, and sometimes other things get in the way, and that's okay. So I'm not, I get this question often. It's like, how do you deal if you couldn't meditate that day? It's like, well, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Like sometimes the meditation may be, 10 minutes before I go to bed. Just a moment of peace and silence. Can I make it sometimes I have my cooking meditation. I'm making food for my family. Can I be emptying my mind and be present in just preparing this food? That may have been my meditation that day.
So you're describing kind of being mindful in all aspects of your life, not necessarily just with yoga or just with meditation, but in the cooking of things, or and I guess even being with your children at times.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, is if anything, this practice is supposed to enhance everything else that we do in our lives, and it proves itself by how we live our lives, not by how many hours do I sit on meditation and how many poses I can do. That doesn't prove anything. That is the preparation for what? For living our lives. How content are we in doing, again, the most mundane things? I realized that, of course, it's going to be very exciting to fly to a new city and to teach workshops all weekend and all that stuff that comes around it. That's very exciting. But what about the washing dishes? What about the doing the groceries or going to the recycling station or all the other stuff that still needs to get done? And can I find joy in that? Can I reconnect to the purpose of the small little things that will add up to the most important things of my life? Really, that is where the gratification comes from. That is where that job is the most important job. And sometimes it's like really washing the toilet. So, but what's so sacred about it is not what I'm doing, but how I'm doing it. Look how clean it is now. Look at, like, can I enjoy it while I do it? Although it's going to be dirty tomorrow again, and it will need to get done again and again and again and again and again. So,
is there a most meaningful moment that you've had? What is the most meaningful moment you've had in the last year? I mean, apart from I get the feeling of the, just the small and the big things, but what is the most meaningful thing for you that's happened over the last year, let's say?
I would have to say that is one of those small things. My daughter, for example, she just turned 16, and this girl, she's gone through a whole roller coaster in her life because she was born to parents that were already into yoga and a yoga community. So she was very free-spirited as a young kid. But then when she realized that yoga, family life, parents, it wasn't the normal, she didn't like it anymore. She used to come home like at 7, 8, 9 years old thinking like, why aren't you guys lawyers and accountants and doctors? Like, yoga is a weird thing. So she went through a whole phase where she didn't want to have anything to do with it. And now she's almost like coming around again, seeing for herself what the possibilities are for her, not for us, not for me as my career or whatever it is. So I think a few weeks ago we had one of those moments, and we were having dinner, and she said, I cannot quote exactly, but I remember the feeling very well. Something around, you know what? And we also moved places, moved countries. We went to France and then we came to Switzerland. So we've been moving while she was a teenager. And she resisted it a lot. She didn't like it. It wasn't what she would have chosen. But she said something in the sense of, as challenging as it has been for me, she says, I'm starting to see that there are lots of things that I'm learning that I never thought I would. Something that small, and to me it was like, oh wow, she started to make peace with it. She started to see that even the bad things happen for a good reason. And it was like just this thing that just came, this one line that came out, and for me meant the world. It was like, wow, that she's growing. You cannot teach that to anybody. It's something that we come to a realization that even it was very challenging for her, this life. It always presents us with the challenges that we need. For her, it was very challenging, and I acknowledge that. But then for her to see and to be able to express it, that even bad things happen for a good reason. I think she used those words.
I love what you're saying. It's the sense that your life is now going to continue in the next generation, and the sense of acceptance that you've passed on this true deep resonant place within her now that knows that all things, it's all good, right? That everything that happens makes us grow. And so there's maybe something about that fearlessness that, comes in a quality of people who are innovative. They're fearless. They can, step in and move through the I shouldn't do this, or I should be doing something else, into the sort of why not, and moving forward and accepting that there's going to also be the bumps with that. So isn't it great? Wow. Yeah. Those
Because the
moments
part
where
of the acceptance that you're mentioning right now, when I came to the realization for me that acceptance had to do with also accepting my desires, also accepting what my inclinations, for example, and because for a while it was like, well, that life that I would like to create maybe is not compatible with having a family. When I finally left Vancouver, for us was a big deal, because we created home in Vancouver. We made not only our physical home, but the studio and the studios. And at some point, when we realized, but this is not the life anymore that we want to create, we want to create another life. And to accept that, to come to terms with like, okay, I'm feeling it right now, and to go with it. We had to go with it, and we knew it was going to be challenging on the kids. It would have been much easier for the kids to keep growing in Vancouver and suburban living. We had a great community with us, but there was something else there. And when that is part of also the thing with acceptance, is that it's accepting the whole package, and it will always come with uncomfortable circumstances. It will always come with a lot of like uncertainties. We didn't have anything guaranteed. Like, how is Europe going to work out for us? We don't know, but we will never know until we do it. So the passing on, if there was anything that I wanted to teach my children, was why not? Like, why not? Why not? What if it could also work? What if it could work out? And we will never know it until we do it. And if it doesn't work out, we'll choose differently next time. But there's absolutely nothing to lose here. Nothing to lose. And that's something that now I'm 42, I'm almost 42. I really get it. Like, there's nothing to lose of real value. Things will come and go. The Canadian dollar will drop 30%. You had all your savings there.
But 40%, Nico. You've been away for a while. It's 40%.
40. All my savings are in Canadian dollars anyway. So, but it doesn't matter. In the end, it's like, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, and it's not really what matters. Yeah.
So that was a big step, actually, selling Yoga and moving to Europe, and as you see, France, and then now in Switzerland. What was the turning point that made that decision, though? Like, how did you decide that let's go for it? Let's sell Yoga.
Yeah, first of all, it was always in the back of our minds to one day go to Europe, because I'm European descendant. My grandparents were born in Italy. I was actually born in France. I grew up in Argentina, but there was this big connection with Europe. And for my wife, she's French Canadian, so she already spoke French. My kids went to French school, to French immersion. So we had the language, we had the passports, we had family. It was like, okay, let's do it at some point. But the determining factor was, for me, when I got excited again about the new possibilities in my career. All of a sudden, I was running the yoga operations for Yoga, and at the time we were 8 studios, and I had a great job. I was working with the studio directors. We had in total like 150 teachers at the time, and our job was to give them work, to train them, to create more abundance and possibilities. So I loved my job. But after 5 years of doing that, I felt that my passion was still in yoga as a yoga teacher, and I was spending most of my time not really doing what I love. And that was the determining point for me to say, I have to quit. First of all, my position in the company. If I don't love it, I shouldn't do it. Mm. I do what I love, and no fear with that, but I'm going to move on with my career. So I let go of that. And as soon as I let go, I had opportunities to start travel teaching, because I had said no before, I couldn't do it. So I toured Europe a few times. And I saw here that there were so many possibilities, that in North America, because of how fast things can grow and how big it can get, it became, there was a saturation point. Or at least I felt it in my offerings. I was like, I don't know what else to offer. I see these people, they're coming to my classes like 12 times a week. I don't know if I have anything else to teach them at this point. Well, I felt that when I was visiting cities around Europe or Asia, that they were so starving for it. They really want it. And I felt that there was a need. And I was like, okay, and there was a need for me to put myself in a place where I don't know how things are going to work out, to challenge myself again, to challenge ourselves. We were living a great life. You know it. You live in the most beautiful place in the world. Vancouver is amazing. But it was a big bubble for us. And we didn't know what we know now.
Yeah, it is a beautiful, Vancouver is beautiful. Switzerland, I've lived there as well, and it's really beautiful. It's nice to what you've done is you've created novelty for yourself, right? And that has been shown to, put the brain into a creative, energetic state of dopamine and serotonin and all those things that actually drive like reinvention, which is kind of, what was happening for you there as you're describing it. And I'm also hearing your value of authenticity that you mentioned before, because you started to check in with your feelings about your career, and you felt like you were tired of, there was sort of, you taught everybody as much as you needed to teach. And so it seemed like, looking for new vistas to be inspired. And it made me think, I wonder who your most powerful mentors have been, Nico. Who would you say has been your mentors? Who teaches you?
My teachers. I met so many great teachers, both yoga related and not yoga related, in life in general, from teachers in elementary school and high school and relatives. So many. And yet I don't have a guru. I don't have a main teacher. I teach different styles of yoga. I teach mostly vinyasa, but I teach yin and hatha, and I teach pranayama and meditation. I don't have the one person that was my son, my son, like my everything. I don't know if I was cut for that type of relationship with the one person. Basically, because in my own personal story, which we never got into it, and it's not important anyways, was to not to personalize the teachings, to take the teachings, but not to make it about the person, the teacher, to take the message, but not to make it about the messenger. I don't know if I'm...
Yeah, that makes sense.
So for me, it was like, take all the teachings, apply them in your own field first. Before you teach them to someone else, feel them, experience them, know them, and then pass them on. And I find that in that alchemy of receiving something, testing it, and passing it on, all of a sudden what I get from it is like the Ramayana says, to teach what you have learned is to learn it twice over. Well, I find that I learn it like 1,000 times. Like the more I teach it, the more I learn it, actually, that it comes back to me, that I cannot fool myself anymore, that I cannot pretend, oh, I don't know it. You're saying it and you mean it in such a powerful way to say it to another person, and all of a sudden it's like, boom, it comes back to you. You leave that meeting or that class or that interaction, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, like something that I was just going through me, like channeling through, and all of a sudden it just comes back enormous. I call certain books my teachers, actually. For me, the Tao Te Ching is my teacher. The Bhagavad Gita is my teacher. They're great authors like Eckhart Tolle. He's an amazing teacher. Never met him in person, but I learned so much from that man. And Alan Watts and Joseph Campbell. And
he lives in Vancouver, actually.
I know.
Spring Island. I'm going to try to have him on the next series. I'm going to do a series on your creative life, and I'm hoping to, have him on the next series.
Wow.
But yeah, and as you're talking about, books, it's like we can linger on a page or linger on a poem. We can actually linger on the sort of feelings that come in the reading, right? And that's kind of what you're describing. So, you've got that creative brain that actually goes right into, immerses yourself in the Tao and you're integrating constantly when you're talking and teaching with your students. I could see that process is your process.
And some of these powerful texts also endure time because they change generations, and the same as music, as Bach, it will never grow old, that kind of music, because it taps into something that is very true and is very real. So it can apply to any situation, any moment, any culture. And what you're saying about the value of those teachings, and to not underestimate our capacity to actually learn something, to really learn it, but from life. And when it happens in life, you're reminded that you've been taught that before. Like the lesson happened, the implementation needed to go through. So many times I felt, more specifically with these two books, the Bhagavad Gita and the Tao, that first I got the theory in reading, and I was like, oh yeah, sure, that's a good idea. And then soon after, usually, life would present a situation in which, did you really learn it? Are you going to apply it right now? Because if you really learn it, isn't the way you walk through this right now, and how you deal with this situation right now. So let's see how you do it. So then in the end, it's not about the book anymore. It's about our own journey as we go through.
You're becoming. And that kind of one-mindedness in yoga, right? That sense of one-mindedness in your life, then, that you're actually becoming, it all becomes part of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that integration piece of just really, it is you. Yeah.
And to follow, if I, for any teachings, I get this from students often, which book should I read, or what should I focus on? And the question comes back to them in the form, but what are you interested in? Let's go back to that point, as opposed to me telling you what's interesting. What are you into? What because whatever you're interested in, it will become interesting. I went through that so many times because I meet people from different cultures all the time. And I had this woman talking about flower arrangement that she talked for 45 minutes, and it was the most incredible talk. She was so interested in it. She wasn't talking about the way you put the flowers. She was talking about the empty space in between the flowers. It was just mind-blowing. The emptiness in between it, and the harmony comes from the spaces. And all of a sudden I was like, keep talking. It was beyond. She was able to, because she was really interested in it, to tap into something that was like a universal teaching about everything. But first you have to go to that minute thing that interests you.
Yeah, I love that part about the spaces too, and it makes me because in those spaces you find out what you really love and your passion, and it's making me think that you do a lot of focus around the breath and breathing. Can you talk a little bit about that and why that's important?
Mm-hmm. The breathing is in yoga terminology, prana is connecting us to our energy body, and we're taught all these exercises and there are formulas. Some of them are very specific, some of them are very detailed, some of them are complicated. The idea is to train our focus, to train our mind to be single focused, present for an extended period of time. But it doesn't end there. Because if we apply the technique and we become really, really good at the technique and we just do the technique really well, at the most we become a good technician.
Mm.
And what is pointing towards is like both the doing and the stepping back, the withdrawing from the doing. So at some point, if you are really good at doing the technique, you're actually not doing the technique anymore. The technique is doing you. If, for example, if someone plays an instrument and they play, you have to go through it until you're not longer thinking about it and your fingers are moving, and eventually you can get into a point where like your eyes are reading the note and your finger is executing it almost without a thought going through it. That would be, at some point, it's like all of a sudden you had to let go of thinking about the technique and it was moving through you.
Yeah,
So
I know,
the work with
yeah,
the
what you're
breath
describing, somebody who's a great musician, you know, they are kind of a moving musical note, right? Somebody playing the guitar sometimes, and they just are one with their guitar and moving, and yoga is kind of giving us that, I guess. But I'm
one
just,
could say that the music was playing itself through the musician. At some point, the musician almost disappears completely, and the music Bach plays itself.
like a
The music
conduit.
plays itself, right? Like, so in the yoga practice would be tap into that energy that flows through you. So you're not doing yoga anymore. You're lending your body and mind and this time for yoga to be done through you. It's like, people know it in making love. Love is different than having sex. When you're making love, you're not thinking about it. It's doing you. It's taking you for a ride. It's like, you're not in control. You're not trying to control it. Different having sex. You get more analytical about it. But making love. So the work with pranayama would be kind of like that intimate, in the sense that at some point you can actually step back and let go. Every pranayama exercise finishes, and at the end you go back to, the teacher would say, return to your normal breathing or to your involuntary breathing. And sometimes you got so good at doing the technique that it's kind of like you kind of still want to mess with it. But the whole teaching is like, it's perfect the way it does itself. If it wasn't, you wouldn't be alive anymore. You're not thinking about your breath when you're sleeping. So why wouldn't you trust it? Now step back and look at it. And then it's...
So, Nico, can you actually take us through an exercise right now? Just a short one. We're coming close to our time, but just, yeah. So we actually have a, hands-on. Let's ride the wave with you.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it.
The breath, yeah.
We're going to do a very simple breath. And again, don't be, sometimes when we hear simple, it's like, oh, I'll get this one. Sometimes the simple stuff is the most challenging one.
Yeah.
We call this one is Ujjayi Pranayam. And it's basically an inhalation followed by an exhalation. What is different about Ujjayi is that we inhale and exhale just through the nose. And we basically narrow the throat. So the volume of breath, or the passage, is narrowed to the point that it starts making like a soothing sound. Some people would say it's like a Darth Vader sound, or it's like the wind sound. So we're going to do this in a moment. And we're gonna tap into the sound as we inhale our lungs to the full capacity and as we exhale completely. And we're gonna focus on three things. One is the sound, to make it a peaceful, soothing sound, not a harsh, not a constricted sound. So we're gonna narrow, but we're not gonna need not too much, not too little, just enough. The second one is to allow the inhalation and the exhalations to be smooth from beginning to end. So let's say it took a count of 5 to breathe in, a count of 5 to breathe out. So perfectly balanced. That would be the third aspect. And the second one is smooth. So there are no hiccups, there's no rush, there's nowhere you need to get to. You don't have to worry about it. Your body will tell you when the lungs are full. Your body will tell you when there's no more air. Like you just focus on soothing sound, evenness of breath, and the balance. Yeah? Can we focus on those three?
Yes.
So I'll take you through it. When I sit up tall, ideally not resting our backs on anything, but you can be on a chair, but without resting our backs on the back of the chair. And then simply close your eyes. And begin by observing the involuntary breath. That is the breath that you don't do. And that for some of us is already a challenge, because anytime we put our eyes on something, we feel like we need to change it or comment on it or judge it. But for now, for this exercise, trust that your natural breath is plenty good. And in a moment, you're going to tap into one of these breaths as if you were in the ocean just about to catch a wave, as if you were surfing waves. So whenever you feel ready, you're going to start inhaling through your nostrils, full inhalation. And then through your nose, breathe it all out. And continue with that. You inhale slowly from bottom to top. And then you exhale completely from top to bottom. Focusing on these three things: the sound of the breath, the evenness of that sound, the smoothness of the sound, and the balance between inhale and exhale. And then next time you finish an exhalation, just let it go. And return to watching it without doing it. And simply notice anything inside. Any shift. Maybe it's a physical shift. Maybe it's a mental shift. Maybe you can notice a little bit more quietness inside, or a moment of silence. And then you can open your eyes. It can be really simple. And the technique is not it. What is it is you. And the technique is always trying to bring you, back to ourselves, back inside. If the technique doesn't point toward our hearts, it's not pointing in the right direction.
That's lovely. I love the way that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Nico, if people want to find out more, or they want to come, you put on a number of retreats all over the world, and I know you're working from Switzerland right now. How can people find out about you? Can you give us a website or?
Yeah, well, I have a website, nicoluce.com, and I'm online. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I travel through Europe in general. I'm doing most stuff here in Europe, but I go to North America at least twice a year. I'm going back to Vancouver in April for some workshops, and then back in the summer for Wanderlust. There's a festival, and I also
Whistler,
have.
right?
It's in Whistler, yeah. That's in end of July, and then I have videos online. There's a website called Gaia.com. It used to be Gaiam TV, and now it's called Gaia.com. And I have about 15-20 online classes, so people can practice at home. And one of the greatest rewards of traveling around the world is meeting some of my old-time students that I never met in person before. And these people, every now and then someone comes and gives me a big hug, and it's like, you have no idea. We grew all together. I've been practicing with you for about 10 years, and it's very rewarding. This technology can connect us too, and does great things. So,
Isn't that wonderful? That's. I know. I find that too in my work too. Sometimes I'll see a client that I've seen 15 years ago, and their life has evolved, and they've had babies, and it's so rewarding. We're so privileged to work with people, and we're all part of this together.
Mm-hmm. And we don't know. Sometimes we say one thing that for us something that we said, and a person would tell you 5 years later, when you said that one line, that hit me, that was speaking to me. And sometimes you really don't know, and it's like, oh wow. So back to trusting, when we do what we love and we put love into what we do, the ripple effect is just wait, because you have no idea.
Yeah. I have this vision of everybody here on the call right now and riding this wave of love right now, and just having gone through this with you today. I'm just very grateful, and I'm reminded of a poem by John O'Donohue. So I just wanted to end with that. And he said, "May all that is unforgiven in you be released. May your fears yield their deepest tranquilities. May all that is unlived in you blossom into a future graced with love." And I'm just feeling so grateful for you today. Thank you so much, Nico. And
that's so beautiful. Thank you. Both poems talk about inside. It's all inside. It's all within us. That's a great choices. I love them both.
Thank you. Well, I am looking forward to, I'm going to sign up for Wanderlust and come to Whistler, and I look forward to seeing you in Vancouver. And again, thank you so much. And I know others will be checking out your website and finding out about your next retreats and things, as I know you've got those offerings all the time. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah. I love Vancouver, and I love everybody there.
And I just want to thank all the people that are watching the webinar Shine in 2016 and being with us through these last 9 weeks. And next week, we'll be bringing it all together with Jennifer Halinda, who is the Executive Director for Dress for Success. And I'll also be reporting on how much we have created, not just energetically with this Shine in 2016 webinar series, but in a donatable amount that will go towards their program. And so your chance to contribute to a very worthwhile cause is still there. If you'd like to buy the archive for the Shiny 2016 series, feel free to do that for $49 Canadian. It's a deal, so it's kind of is a win-win. And I look forward to talking to Jennifer about, what kind of brought her to work with the program, and what are some of the stories of success that she's had for people that have gone in to recreate a career that builds sustainability for their families and for others in their communities. And I just want to thank you for being, through the series, all the way. And I just wish you a wonderful, shiny week. And I'll see you next week. And thank you, Nico, once again.
Thank you, Joanne, and thank you, everyone there. Yeah.
Bye for now.
Bye.